I guess we got to call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 7 of the House Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Before we get started, actually no, I'm gonna skip all the preamble today. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on October 27, 2020, the committee is commencing its study of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the financial health of veterans organizations. Welcome to all the witnesses who have taken the time to join us today. We have with us from the Royal Canadian Legion, Stephen Clark, National Executive Director, and Linda Mifflin, Legion of Gold River. And also from Vets Canada, we are joined today by Debbie Lowther, Chair and Co-Founder. We did have a third panelist, but I believe last minute they had to decline the meeting for, I believe, a personal reason. So sorry, we only have the two, but these are some pretty awesome witnesses for us today. We do have 3 witnesses today. I've got the clerk whispering in my ear, correcting me as I go here. And just for the witnesses' sake, you will each have 5 minutes for opening remarks. When you get down to a minute, I will do this. Don't panic. A minute is a long time to wrap up your thoughts. And also, when we get into questions from members of Parliament, I will also give the sort of 1 minute warning, keeping in mind I try to be as liberal as possible with the time and give people an opportunity. I see Rachel Blaney thought that was funny. Nobody else did. Thanks, Rachel. And we'll try and give everyone the opportunity to get their messages out and questions answered. First up for the first 5 minutes, Mr. Stephen Clark, National Executive Director of the Royal Canadian Legion. The next 5 minutes are all yours, sir.
Thank you very much for the invitation to the Royal Canadian Legion to appear before you today. The Legion is a large national organization united around a common vision, and for the first time in our almost 100 years of existence in serving veterans in Canada, we faced a challenge of our individual and collective financial health brought about by the COVID-19 outbreak. Being a dues-based organization, branches fund their own operating expenses through membership, which is supplemented by revenue from such things as their clubhouse and restaurant sales and hall rentals. Since March of this year, those revenue streams had pretty much dried up. Until recently, the Legion had never sought nor received government financial assistance for our operations. That reach out, therefore, on 28 April and again on 3 June was unprecedented. It was a very difficult decision, but it was necessary for the survival of the Royal Canadian Legion. Now, the government had introduced a variety of funding programs to assist not-for-profits like the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy and the Canada Emergency Business Account Loan, but few branches were eligible for these existing programs. When it was announced, the Emergency Community Support Fund seemed to be exactly what was needed, but that program funded projects designed to help those in vulnerable communities during the COVID-19 crisis. Again, an organization's operational expenses could not be funded. Similarly, regional relief and recovery funding through 6 regional development agencies was suggested as funding options by both federal and provincial governments. But these programs specifically state not-for-profits as being ineligible. Further, the announcement of $83 million for the Resilient Communities Fund, managed by the Ontario Trillium Foundation, was only for new program costs to recover and rebuild from COVID-19, and not, again, for operational costs. So how much financial trouble were branches in? There are 1,381 Legion branches with 1,347 in Canada. Their viability and sustainability was triaged in June, July, and September to determine their financial health, to assess what branches were facing, how they were managing, and unfortunately, which ones would close. The results remained fairly consistent between the 3 assessment periods, and they were not encouraging. 159 branches indicated they would be unable to open or would close within 3 months of opening, and 21 have now closed. 329 indicated they would open but would struggle financially. 254 branches did apply for existing relief programs. 186 received that assistance and 30 were declined. And with the resurgence of COVID-19 cases, it has brought further temporary branch closures and will bring added financial stress as branches try to persevere and overcome the losses from the first few months of the outbreak to prevent them from going over the financial cliff. In May, the Legion's Dominion Executive Council released $3 million from national reserves to provide grants to branches in need. It helped stave off imminent closures, but struggles continued. It was hard to stay calm and carry on. With a lack of response from approaches to government for assistance, innovation grew from within to ensure the Lifeline network for veterans and communities nationwide continued unabated. That lifeline included our commitment to eradicating and preventing veterans' homelessness, providing benevolent comfort and care to veterans, offering benevolent and disability application assistance, providing emergency funding, offering resources and referrals to support transition and mental health, financial support to hospitals and care facilities, and youth group sponsorships. That innovation included GoFundMe pages, bottle drives, preparing heat and serve meals, offering drive-through meals, and online live music parties. Operationally, we held virtual buddy check coffee meetings and implemented or enhanced modernizations for the annual poppy campaign, reoffered digital poppies, and revised commemorations to respect restrictions. The Legion is appreciative for the Veterans Organization Emergency Support Fund announced on 10 November and the $14 million allocated to Legion branches in Canada. The application process is already underway, with initial disbursements to take place on 21 December, with future disbursements scheduled for 2021. This funding will definitely help branches. The road ahead is not without financial and operational uncertainty. Regardless of what our branches have faced or have yet to face, what is certain is that our commitment and obligation to serving Canada's veterans, their families, and our communities will continue. The cost not to do so is unimaginable. Mr. Chair, the Legion thanks you for this opportunity to make this presentation as part of this important study.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. We're now going over for another 5 minutes to Ms. Linda Mifflin, Legion of Gold River, Branch 270. The next 5 minutes are all yours.
I think there might be some technical difficulties.
Yeah, Ms. Mifflin, can you hear us at all? Yeah, she looks frozen on the screen. Maybe the text can reach out to her, and we'll move on to Vets Canada. Miss Debbie Lowther, Chair and Co-founder. If you could go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you for the invitation to appear before you today. I'm happy to provide you with some insight into the impact that COVID-19 has had on the financial well-being of Vets Canada. For those of you who are not aware of who Vets Canada is, I will provide a brief introduction to our organization first. Vets Canada is a federally registered charity whose mission is to provide assistance to veterans of the Canadian Armed Forces and RCMP who are homeless, at risk of becoming homeless, and who are otherwise in crisis. We were founded in 2010 and have hundreds of dedicated volunteers across the country who provide immediate support to veterans. We also operate 3 drop-in support centers across the country, one in Ottawa, one that is co-located with our headquarters here in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and one in Edmonton that is operated by Vets Canada on behalf of the government of Alberta. To date, we have responded to almost 12,000 requests for assistance from veterans and their families from coast to coast, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays. Requests for assistance come to us in a variety of ways, through our 1-888 phone line, our website, or social media platforms. Some are self-referrals from veterans themselves, and some come from other organizations or agencies. Over the past year, an average of 77% of all of our referrals came from Veterans Affairs Canada case managers. I was once told that support is a big word with many meanings. So I will elaborate on what I mean when I say we provide support to veterans. In the event that we encounter a veteran who is homeless, we immediately move the veteran from the streets by providing temporary accommodations, usually in a motel or hotel. We provide food and clothing, and we assist that veteran in finding permanent housing, at which time we will cover the first month's rent and deposit, and we will provide furniture to help the veteran become established in their new home. We prevent homelessness for those veterans who are at risk of losing their housing by helping with arrears rent to avoid evictions. We pay hydro and other utilities bills to prevent disconnection. These are just a few examples of the support we provide, but being a small organization without strict regulations, we often have the luxury to provide many other outside of the box supports as well. I would say that food insecurity is the most prevalent need that we have seen. However, as a result of the pandemic, housing issues have certainly risen. Since 2014, we've received funding from the Government of Canada. From 2014 to 2018, we were under contract with Veterans Affairs Canada. And from 2018 until the end of March of this year, we were funded through Veterans Affairs Canada's Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund. Until 2 weeks ago, we hadn't received any federal funding since the end of March. As you know, at that time, COVID-19 had begun to seriously affect the lives of all Canadians, including veterans. By the end of March, we closed our 3 drop-in support centers and our headquarters to the public, and our staff worked from home, responding to requests for assistance from veterans. Fortunately, there were many things that we were able to do remotely to support veterans with no physical contact. And in the event that in-person support was required, many of our dedicated volunteers were willing to meet with veterans while taking all necessary precautions. In spite of the drop-in centers and headquarters being closed, we still had to pay rent and utilities, and veterans still required assistance. Over the past 8 months, we've seen an increase in the number of veterans who have required assistance, but sadly, and yet understandably, we have seen a decrease in donations from kind, caring Canadians. Specifically, the requests for assistance increased by 36% compared to the same time period last year, and our donations decreased by 41%. Keeping up with the overhead and the request for assistance with an all but non-existent revenue stream was extremely difficult, and there were times over the past few months that we thought we would have to shut down. As the only veteran serving organization, aside from Veterans Affairs, that was fully operational and open to provide support during this difficult time, we couldn't allow that to happen. We are an organization with a very small staff, only 6 paid employees across the country, 5 who provide direct support to veterans, and 1 administrative staff person. We are fortunate that I fill the role of executive director without taking a paycheck. In spite of that, we did have to make the difficult decision to lay off our administrator in October, and I took on that role as well. Had we not recently received funds from the Veterans Organization's Emergency Support Fund, we would have had to lay off more people. Vets Canada began 10 years ago because we identified a gap. We discovered that many veterans had not successfully transitioned to civilian life and were slipping through the cracks. Our aim was to fill that gap and to provide a safety net for veterans. We know that we have saved lives and we have helped hundreds of families stay together. Therefore, we know that had we been forced to close due to our financial insecurity directly related to COVID-19, it would have been a deep impact on the lives of our most vulnerable veterans. This, in turn, would have had an impact on the caseloads at Veterans Affairs. As Canada moves into the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, with many veterans barely surviving the first wave, we know we will continue to receive more and more requests for assistance, but we will continue to do everything we can with what we have to respond to those requests. In closing, I will just say that with regard to the impact that COVID-19 has had on the financial health of Vets Canada, in the past 10 years, we have never before felt the threat of closure until we had to deal with the effect that the pandemic has had on the lives of veterans in need. Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm happy to answer questions from the committee.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the work that that you do with veterans on the ground. It's much appreciated by this committee. I understand that we have Ms. Mifflin back with us. Linda Mifflin, Legion of Gold River, Branch 270. I understand that the internet connection is not the greatest where you are, so we'll do our best. And please, the next 5 minutes are all yours. Sorry, Ms. Mifflin, you're on mute. If you want to take yourself, and I think you've frozen again. Try taking yourself off mute.
Is this better?
That is much better. And you know what I would suggest?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just great. I'm wondering if you maybe turn your camera off, and that might help. And at least we'll hear your testimony. Might be a little better on the
sure.
On the bandwidth.
Let me figure out how to do that. Stop video. There we go.
There you go. Yep,
okay,
we can hear you just fine. Go. Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so we'll start again. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before the House of Commons Committee on Veterans Affairs. It is both an honor and a privilege to participate in its study of the Royal Canadian Legion and other veteran organizations and their financial help during and after COVID-19. My name is Linda Mifflin, and I am representing the Gold River Branch 270 of the Royal Canadian Legion in Gold River, BC, located on the west coast of beautiful Vancouver Island on the traditional lands of the Mauchit-Mushlit First Nations. Our nearest urban centre is more than 100 kilometres to the east. We are a picturesque community of approximately 1,300 people situated at the gateway to historic Nootka Sound. Our branch has a membership of about 185 members, of which 35 are veterans. Prior to COVID-19, we were an active branch, open 7 days a week and featuring a full calendar of activities, including meat draws, darts, food service, bingo, pool, and live entertainment. We were able to provide the following: an environment of camaraderie for veterans, their families, and our members, assistance and support to veterans, their families, and all our members during illness or injury, assistance and support for veterans, their families, and our members in accessing benefits available through the Royal Canadian Legion, Remembrance Day services. Community events included community Easter egg hunt, a Canada Day barbecue, Gold River Days, annual Legion golf tournament, community Christmas party with free food and entertainment, pancake breakfasts, participation in parades and hosting dances for Valentine's, New Year's Eve, and other similar events, as we have the only dance floor in our community. We hosted birthday parties, celebrations of life, wedding receptions, went for little or in many cases no charge. We provide funding for veterans and their families to assist in expenses associated with end of life. Annually, between the branch and Our Ladies Auxiliary, through fundraising and events, we provide thousands of dollars to our veterans and their families and the community at large through means such as supporting minor hockey, ice skating, local food bank, donating bursaries to deserving students, and the continued support of other Legion venues such as Broadmead. Provide financial assistance to veterans, their families, and members of the community who require assistance to travel to seek medical attention outside of our area, and to individuals traveling for sports and other activities. Fundraising allowed us to provide many community events, including food and entertainment, work with our First Nations groups to support educational opportunities, inject money into the local economy by supporting local businesses wherever possible. We provide a portion of our building to veterans and seniors activities at a significantly reduced rate, and they in turn provide social activities and recently have started to provide food hampers in coordination with other community groups. Then COVID-19 arrived. Our doors were closed from mid-March until mid-June, during which time we developed our safety plan, modified our space to meet the requirements for social distancing, and put in place many measures to protect the health and safety of our veterans, members, staff, volunteers, and guests. Our current situation is our hours of operation are reduced to 3 days a week from 7. Our member attendance is down dramatically. Our gross revenue is reduced by 80%. The loss of revenue from BC lotteries and gaming due to decreased hours and reduced attendance. Currently, due to COVID-19, volunteers are unwilling or unable to come out and provide services to our veterans, their families, and our community due to risks of exposure. We depend on volunteers and staff to keep our branch operating. We have paid staff only for bar service and custodial. Volunteers make up the majority of our services to the community. During our reduced hours, veterans and members are unable to socialize. current public health orders prohibit us from hosting meat draws, 50-50, darts, pools, card, food service, or any other events. Currently, COVID-19 is restricting our ability to provide or assist veterans, their families, our members, and others in our community in the following ways. We are not able to provide transportation to medical appointments, whether in town or further down island, to shop for groceries or other needs due to a decrease in volunteers. It is inhibiting our ability to check in and interact with our veterans and members who are suffering as a result of the isolation. It is hampering our ability to provide low-cost meals to our veterans and members. Without any events or fundraising activities, we are unable to be open enough hours to keep our regular staff gainfully employed, including the relatives of veterans who are employed here. COVID-19 has affected many other services we are known for, namely Remembrance Day services, Canada Day celebrations, and many other community events. The suspension of normal Remembrance Day services impacted us and our community by past residents and families did not travel to participate, a loss of visitations with veterans that reside here, and a loss of family time, loss of revenue for both us, our local hotels, restaurants, shops, and stores. Our poppy campaign was compromised because we do not have the resources of larger urban areas to accommodate poppy tagging. In conclusion, Legions are an integral part of communities of our size and provide a variety of important services and resources to veterans, their families, and to our communities as a whole. The lack of revenue as a result of COVID-19 jeopardizes those activities and our relationship with our community. Prior to COVID-19, we were an active branch providing resources to veterans, their families, our members, and guests. Currently, we are struggling to meet the challenges of keeping our doors open during this pandemic. Indeed, our future is hanging in the wind. The lack of revenue and fundraising is putting the long-term viability of our branch and the work we do post-COVID-19 very much in question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad we were able to hear you, if not see you. Clearly, we have some more work to do on the broadband out in Victoria, but I wanted to just thank both you and Mr. Clark for the work that you guys do. We all have Legions in our ridings, and they're amazing cornerstones in our communities. For the first round of questions, we have Conservative Party, Mr. MP John Bristol. 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the guests and the witnesses who've come before us. This is an important study because we are hearing, all of us as MPs, regardless of what party we're affiliated with, the concern within veterans organizations, service organizations, community organizations, just how grave the situation is with respect to not just raising funds, but also the expenses that are associated with the closures. My first question is to you, Mr. Clark. On September 4th, you wrote a letter, an open letter to all parliamentarians. Actually, Dominion President Irvine wrote a letter, and he said in that letter that I continue to witness extreme stress over the possibility of Legion branches disappearing. Now, the initial request months ago from Dominion Command was for $30 million of funding that would be required in order to alleviate a lot of the stress that these branches are facing. How difficult is the problem going to be with only $14 million of funding?
Mr. Broussard, we will certainly manage. And again, we are appreciative for the money that we have been provided through the VOESF. Now, the $30 million was based upon expenses that a branch would have incurred in the initial 5 months of the closure. Based on that average expenditure of $5,000 times 1,347 branches times the number of months they were closed, brought it up to approximately $34 million minus the $3 million we had already provided. That would have been a start. Now, this has gone on a little bit longer. We've got about half of what we had been hoping for, but still, we will manage as best we can and are appreciative for that money.
So the $3 million in reserves that the Royal Canadian Legion provided as an emergency relief to many of these legions, are you planning on replenishing those reserves at Dominion Command, or are you going to forego those reserves, Mr. Clark?
We will forego those reserves. The $14 million received will be for Legion branches only.
One of the things you mentioned as well is that there were legions across the country who didn't have the opportunity to access some of the benefits, whether it was the emergency business account. And in subsequent meetings that you and I have had, we've discussed, and I've met with provincial commands in BC and the Yukon, as well as Alberta and Manitoba, the difficulty with respect to some of the tax filing situations that they're facing right now. And I know my colleague, Mr. Lawrence, has asked the minister to intervene in this regard, but I'm wondering if you could briefly, because I do have a question for Ms. Lowther, briefly talk about the situation some of these smaller legions are facing with respect to their tax situation.
Absolutely. I was approached, in fact, today from a branch in Nova Scotia that had filed their T2 with CRA and received a response they could not accept that filing because the branch was not registered nor incorporated. Our Legion branches are not incorporated. The organization as an entity is, but not the individual Legion branches. So that poses a problem. If a requirement to get funding through the CEBA loan program requires you to be incorporated, our branches aren't. So there poses a problem.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's an important thing for the committee to consider as we move forward, perhaps as part of our recommendations with respect to the situation that Mr. Clark just outlined. Ms. Lowther, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I can't begin to appreciate the work and the stress that you have been under over the course of the last several months. I know that you did receive funding in the latest announcement and the passing of Bill C4 to the tune of somewhere around $850,000. Is that correct? So typically on a year, what would Vets Canada receive from Veterans Affairs Canada in terms of money to facilitate their operations and the great work that you do for veterans?
So the $850,000 that we received actually is the largest sum of money that we have received from the federal government. Our funding prior to that, through the Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund, was $840,000 for an 18-month period. So we're definitely in a better situation with this $850,000. However, given the increase in the number of veterans coming forward, I guess we're kind of in the same boat, really, if you measure it out that way.
So can you speak about the impact on veterans and their families? I noticed on September 24th, Vets Canada issued a tweet about CERB ending in 6 days, and you know that you'll be swamped with requests to help veterans and their families nationwide. Unfortunately, we haven't had any federal funding since March. Can you talk about the impact that you've seen on veterans and their families as a result of not just the work that you haven't been able to do, but also anecdotally from other organizations as well?
Yeah, so a lot of the veterans that have come our way were receiving the CERB payments, and we've had a few who, once that ended, they were in dire straits, and then we've had also a few who weren't actually entitled to those CERB payments, so they're going to have to pay those back. Then we've also had veterans who, were in a second career or I guess subsidizing their pensions by working part-time, and a lot of those were laid off, lost their employment because of COVID. So again, we're looking at supporting those veterans.
Alors encore, nous appuierions ces témoins.
We're under the impression that we would not be very long without funding. Unfortunately, a budget was not tabled in March of this year, so there was no vehicle with which to provide us that funding. So we've waited.
Thank
you very much, and that's time.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Now over for 6 minutes, MP Lalonde, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Always a pleasure to see back some of you, and also welcome Madame Mifflin as a witness for me. Anyway, that's the first introduction, so welcome. First of all, I want to say thank you for all the work that's been done, and I think you reflected clearly on, I think, something that no one expected last March, and the impact on many individuals, including our veterans, and particularly on the homelessness. Mr. Clark, if I may say, I know that certainly here locally, the announcement for the 14 million was well received, and certainly 632 has done great work in trying to expand on other avenue of revenue. Maybe I know it's not the case for all the Legion, and I'm certainly very appreciative of the testimony by Mrs. Mifflin. But maybe, Mr. Clark, tell me as the money will be flowing, what is the current plan for this funding across our great legions?
Thanks very much, Madame. The 14 million is going to be dispersed, as I said, in a couple of disbursements this year and in 2021. There are 11 specific categories the funding can be used for. We are not replacing lost revenue, unfortunately. We're looking to pay expenses that branches have incurred. So of the 11 categories, such as property tax, insurance, rent or mortgage, utilities, those are the main things that branches have been saying they need help with. So that's what the funds will be used across the country for branches in need. And not every branch will receive the funding. We again are doing a triage. If you're in need, you will get it. If you can get by without it, please do so to help other branches that are in a greater need situation.
Thank you. You did mention that some of the branch were eligible for some of the existing government program and some were not. I know that here the wage subsidy was used, and I'm wondering, is there aspect that you've heard from other Legion as to why they did not qualify for either the ACVA or the wage subsidy?
There are two things that I have heard. One, of course, is the fact that the majority of Legions are staffed by volunteers. So when they made application, they were just not eligible for it. The other thing I had heard, and this specifically was from the province of Quebec, that a number of the branches that applied for the CEBA were required to have a cosigner, that they were not being granted by their financial institutions to receive the loan on their own. So that is something that we are looking into. The inability to perhaps secure a cosigner for the loan caused some problems within that command, but those are the two main issues that I had heard for the declines.
Thank you very much. Maybe Mrs. Mifflin, I know that you've spoke about your great Legion and some of the challenges as being a smaller maybe, and I'm not sure exactly where physically you're located other than in Victoria, but what I'm hearing, no, and my colleague Blaney is saying no, so maybe anyway, you can tell me more about that, but I think I see it more as a rural, a little bit of outside of a large urban center. And I see in your resume here that you work in the food industry and the beverage industry in terms of ability of recuperating some of the revenues on a yearly basis before COVID, mind you. I was wondering, maybe tell us some of the challenges that has been most impacted the fact that you couldn't rent your hall. And I think you said that you're the only dancing hall in your neighborhood. So that has cost you a lot of money in not being able to recuperate those dollars. How do you if I may say, is there a plan of other than government support in finding ways as we're heading to the second wave?
Well, if I may, of course, yes, we are a very small branch in a very small community, and we are a remote location. And so we are pretty much dependent upon our local residents. So when and if the COVID restrictions are relaxed enough to allow us to resume some degree of normal operating, then of course locally we'll focus on fundraising events and that type of thing to bolster up our local branch. Short of that, any applications we can make at points for assistance elsewhere, we will, but mostly we are dependent upon ourselves to sort of, and our community to help out.
What was your percentage of revenues from hall rentals, beverage sales, and catering before COVID?
So from food sales entertainment, those types of things outside of our bar sales, probably we're looking at about 30% of the other income was from events other than bar sales.
Okay, so currently, as we all know, the provincial governments are giving the direction as to, based on the area where you are in terms of your ability to either resume your activity on a more, in quote, normal basis or not, sadly. If you were to tell me a little bit about your situation from your provincial jurisdiction in terms of level, and I'm not sure in British Columbia where you're located, if I may ask.
Very, very brief answer. That's actually time, but I'll allow for a very brief answer, please.
We are located in north central Vancouver Island on the west coast, and we are approximately 100 kilometers from Campbell River, which is our nearest urban center, which is a community of approximately 40,000.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Up next, again for 6 minutes, MP Desilets.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for their testimony. Thank you for your contribution to our veterans. My question goes to Mr. Clark. According to you, do you think that the money is going to be calculated depending on the different provinces and on the different legions? Because the different legions are very different from one another. I've noticed that Quebec legions are very different from the legions in other provinces, and so I was wondering if the funding will take this into account.
Mr. Desilets, absolutely. What we had to do is establish a baseline. We did not know what the branches required on an individual basis. So we have reached out with the application process. They are returning the demands into Dominion Command. We are going to take a look at what the requirements are across the country. We did not, unlike we did with the $3 million reserves, allocate it proportionally by branch. We need to find out what the exact need is so we can best address the need.
Thank you. I'm a visual guy, so I was wondering if you could tell me the following. For example, the Legion of Two Mountains in my riding in Quebec, a very active region, rather a very active legion. It's very engaged in the community. How much money could it expect to receive in order to offset its financial difficulties?
I'm unable to give that quantitative amount at the moment. If you did it proportionally, each legion would receive $10,000, having approximately 1,400 branches and $14 million. But we're not going to apportion it that way. Some branches will receive more, some will receive less. But we are replacing, as I said, expenses as opposed to revenue. So we want to make sure the bills can get paid.
Thank you. I understand that this calculation must be extremely difficult because expenses are different from one legion to another. Could you perhaps explain to me how you've proceeded until now? It's not clear to me. How have you proceeded? Because some regions own their own building, others rent their premises, others have yet a third model. So how are you going to do this?
We have sent an application form to every one of our branches for them to complete. They are looking at their 2019 expenses in 11 separate categories, and putting down what they are requesting for funding for 2020 to meet the expenses in those categories. They have to provide a copy of an audited financial statement or a review engagement or an approved budget, so we know exactly how much branches had expended in these various areas. And you're right, some branches do not have a mortgage, some are not paying rent, but they may have higher costs in other areas. And our goal is to make sure that we can make a definite impact on the branch.
Thank you for that. Now, according to you, the money that's currently budgeted, do you think it's going to meet everybody's needs? And if not, which needs? And for how long? How can you ensure the survival of the legions? Could they survive for 1 month, 2 months, 6 months?
That is a very good question. And that's why we're triaging the branches. Unfortunately, we know that there will be more branches that will not survive. So therefore, providing funding to those particular branches is not going to add to their viability. So regrettably, we know that there will be more closures. We want to make sure that as much as possible, we can get funding to branches that will be able to use that and ensure the sustainability within their particular jurisdiction. Will it continue? Is it enough? I'm going to say at the end of probably February, March, we'll be having branches approaching us for additional funding, and there may not be that funding. It's not a complete answer, but it is a help.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much, Mr. Clark, for your clear answers. That's all for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
For 6 minutes, MP Blaney, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just so everybody understands, Victoria is at the southern part of the island, and most of my riding is in the very northern parts, where, of course, the amazing Gold River, community of Gold River is. And I'm so grateful to all the witnesses for being here. And I just want to say, as a member of parliament who represents 11 legions in my riding, small legions across Canada are the heartbeat of communities. And I just want to thank you so much, Ms. Mifflin, for outlining that so clearly, that they are the place where people go to gather. That is the place that gets rented so that community activities can happen. And the impact that they have on the local economy can never be underestimated. When they have those events, people come to visit, they come to stay, and that impacts the whole region. And I just want to say thank you for that very clear message. And I also just want to acknowledge what Mr. Clark has said repeatedly here today, which is that legions are very independent. They work very hard to be independent, and they are not comfortable asking for help, but because they need to, they must, because of the important role that they play in the country and communities across our country. So I just want to thank you for all of the work. And I know my legions, just to support what you were saying, some are struggling, some have found ways to be surviving. Every legion is unique to its area. So I want to start off with you first, Ms. Mifflin. First of all, thank you for, again, making me the proudest member of parliament in Ottawa. I just can't say enough good things about my riding, but you just proved what a great region that I represent. I just first wanted to ask, did any of the programs that are available currently work in the Gold River Legion? And if you could just tell us, again, seeing that the revenue has gone down by 80%, the gross revenue, how are you guys managing at this time?
Okay, I'll try to answer that to the best of my ability. I believe the programs that are benefiting us at the moment are the wage subsidy. That is, covering a huge portion of our cost for our paid staff and for our custodian. Other than that, how we're managing has been by reducing our hours of operation, trying to manage our costs as closely as we possibly can, managing our inventories. One of the juggling things that we're having to do, of course, is anticipating the next public health order, which may result in our closure again. So we're trying to balance our activities with that. And of course, we can't plan too many things too far in advance. And we're just getting by tightening up our laces and hanging in there.
Well, thank you for that. And I know, and I think you outlined so clearly just the pivotal role that Legions play in so many rural and remote areas. And I want to just as a side note, let you know, I'm still working on that broadband. I know that it's a big challenge in so many parts of our riding, but I'm just wondering if you could outline for us what the concern would be if you guys couldn't be in the community more. You talked about all the services that you provide, how you work with isolated veterans. If the Legion was no longer in Gold River, what would be the impact on the community?
Well, like I said, in communities of our size, Legions are an integral part of the community, and we are the social center for our community. Without us, the veterans would suffer. There would be that loss of opportunity for them to get together and, share and socialize. For the community we provide, like I said in my statement, we inject thousands of dollars into our community every year with, bursaries for students. We support minor hockey, the figure skating, the local food banks. All of those institutions would suffer without the Legion.
And I think something that I just want to get on the record is that prior to COVID, it's always a struggle in our smaller communities, but I just want to clarify that you were doing well. You're talking about how much you give back to the community. I just want to make sure that that's really clear.
Yes, absolutely. Prior to COVID, we were a vibrant little Legion. We were open 7 days a week. We had activities going on in the evenings. We were sponsoring local, activities and providing venues for the community for community events and stuff. And that was prior to COVID. And then once COVID hit and we were forced to close our doors, since then it has been a real challenge because, like I said, we're down, our revenues are decreased by 80%, which means that we don't have anything to give back. But what we do have, we are giving.
Well, I believe that. And I guess the next short question is just how many volunteers have you not seen because of COVID?
The vast majority. So where we may have had, 25 active volunteers before, we now may have 2 or 3.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of round one. Starting us off in round number 2 for 5 minutes. MPC back. The floor is yours.
Great, thanks. Have to remember to unmute myself. Thanks everyone for coming to give your testimony today. These are tough, challenging times. I know that it's tough for Legions in my riding. One's in some real difficulty. They spent a lot of money to renovate and make it a lot nicer for bookings this year, and this summer took on debt. Of course, all that revenue disappeared, and so it's at risk of closing. So I just wanted to quickly talk. Mr. Clark, you've said 159 by your triage would close. So the funding that you're receiving from the government, that is not going to stave off the closures that you mentioned earlier in your testimony, will it?
No, it will not. That's why it's important we work with our provincial commands that know firsthand the financial health of every one of the branches, so they can best direct us on which branches need it and which ones, unfortunately, it will not provide assistance for.
And would you hazard a guess if the funding that you had asked for was delivered, would that have staved off at least some of these legions that are going to be forced to close due to their catastrophic loss in revenue?
If it was provided earlier, yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like you to speak to what happens in a community when a legion closes. I think you've talked about the benefits to community, to veterans, and I think we're not really thinking or talking about the devastating impact that this is going to have on communities. And I wonder if you would speak to that, and then also add, if a legion closes, does it ever open up again? And I suspect I know the answer to that, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. The biggest thing that I would want to refer to is the Legion's primary goal of assisting veterans and their families. So we have 1,400 branches approximately across the country, 1,400 service officers that if a veteran is in need, they know exactly where to go. They can go to the Legion, they can get immediate emergency financial help, they can get sustained assistance. But if a branch isn't there, there's a link of the chain that is gone. So that veteran has to go somewhere else, outside their community perhaps, especially if it's in a more rural area. We want to make things easy for veterans. They have some difficulties, especially with transition or mental health or other factors. Legion service officers are there to give them the assistance they need. And if branches are not there, that assistance still is available, but it's less convenient for the individual veteran. There's also the support that's provided to their families, to local charities, local hospitals. And if branches are not there to provide that, where will that funding come from to assist those programs in the community? We do things not to look for any kind of recognition. We do things because we want to be good community partners, and that's why we're there. We have had branches close across the country. Could they reopen? They could. I have not seen it. So unfortunately, pretty much when a branch closes in a community, its footprint in that community is gone.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you asked for money in both April and June of this year during COVID. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And if money had been flowing quickly after those requests for funds, I think what you're saying is that some of these 159 legions that look like they're going to close, at least some of them would have been saved and staved off closure.
Absolutely, because some of those branches have still yet to open. That it's financially not prudent for them to do so, or not able to do so because they could have a small restaurant, no patio. So therefore, to open up and to provide the funding and expenses that they would have to incur, it's just not viable for them to do so. So if funding had been provided earlier, there's a possibility, absolutely, that some of these branches would be in a better state today.
Right. And one final question that I have today. I know that the poppy drive this year was different with COVID. I know that you tried very hard to adapt with Legion masks and other things. I know I bought a bunch of them. How does it look early on for the receipts from the poppy fund, and what's the impact of that going to be going forward?
Early on, it is not looking positive. Now, there are exceptions. Madame Lalonde's riding in Orleans did exceptional this year, raising over $100,000. But they're the exception. And there are many communities that will not see that level of funding. And the thing with the Poppy campaign is all the money that is raised stays locally to help local veterans. None of it comes to Dominion Command. So if there is less funding, that's less support that's available for veterans, and that will be devastating.
Kind of a double whammy, really, right now.
Absolutely.
Those are all my questions. Thanks very much, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you, and you kept it right on time, so appreciate that. Now I know where all the masks went. We'll have to talk to our friend from Ottawa, Orleans, because I went to go try and buy. I had to beg and plead for one of those masks for Remembrance Day. So, but we did finally be able to purchase one. But up next, we have for 5 minutes, MP Sampson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both, or all three of you, for your presentations. It's an extremely important study to better understand what's happening on the ground and how we can continue to help, which is crucial. Legions do such excellent work in communities, and it's so nice to see how effective they are supporting veterans and their families. I want to thank all of you for that. I also want to talk about Vets Canada. I mean, it's just amazing how you stretch out right across the country and have so many volunteers supporting. I just struggle to understand how effective you people are. As an MP, for example, you basically are 24/7. So you mentioned that in your presentation, Debbie, which is just amazing when you think that MPs can, and we do in our office, call Vets Canada for help. So that's how effective you are. Also, when you think about 75+% of your work throughout COVID-19 or maybe ongoing to was casework from Veteran Affairs. So you are an extremely important organization on the ground to help right across this country, and I can't thank you enough. And I know you spoke how challenging it was financially, and laying off some people that was more administrative than on the ground. And I can't thank you enough as well for the work you've been doing on that front. The 850,000, like you said, it might be the most you've gotten, but there's a couple of factors that come to play here. Is how deep the challenge financially your organization was in the last 6 months to help. And that you had to use those funds, and then being able to support an increased number of veterans and their families because of COVID-19. Can you just talk to us about a bit of how you got through it and how this funding will allow you to continue that work?
Yes, thank you for that, and thank you for your kind words. We did get through it, and I think it was, we were very resourceful. We were able to, really tap into some of our regular donors who, maybe couldn't afford to donate, financially, but they were willing to donate, some food or that sort of thing. We also were not able to, and I mentioned in my presentation, that we've always had the luxury of being able to do kind of outside of the box things. Well, we weren't able to do those sorts of things. We had to focus specifically on, very urgent needs like the food and shelter, those sorts of things. So the funding certainly is going to help us, be able to continue doing the work that we do, as well as, hopefully being able to do, again, some of those outside the box things, because, we work very well with the case managers at Veterans Affairs because, Veterans Affairs can provide, the benefits, the financial benefits that veterans require, but they often, their hands are tied because of, rules and regulations and legislation. So they will come to us for, the things that their hands are tied and they can't do. So this money will enable us to be able to do those things that are, equally as important. So it will help us in that way.
Thank you. Now, your structure is volunteer based. As you said, you only have like 6 people under salary, which is just amazing. Through COVID-19, did you feel you were losing some of the volunteers, or was it increasing? And how do you foresee the next 6 months? Like, how do you see things unfold? Because we're into a second wave. So if you want to talk to us about the monies you have and how you foresee supporting veterans and their families the next 6 months.
So with regard to the volunteers, that's certainly, been a big impact, as our friends at the Legion have said the same thing. We just, as an example, in Ottawa, our Ottawa team has well over 100 volunteers. During COVID, we had less than 10 that were willing to, to go out and meet veterans face to face. So, it's had a big impact in that regard. I have to say, though, a lot of them have missed their volunteer work, and we are having a lot of them start to kind of come back and want to re-engage. And we have more people who are interested in helping. I think people who are, still managing to be to thrive, I guess, during COVID. We've had some of those people reach out and, I'm doing okay, so I want to help others, kind of thing. So over the next 6 months, we're really hoping that the second wave is not going to be as bad as the first wave, but in some areas we're seeing already that it is. So really, over the next 6 months, we're day to day. Really, we'll just see what the future brings for us.
Thank you very much. And I'm afraid that's time, sir. Up next, we have MP Desilets for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much. Well, 2.5 minutes, that's not a lot. Miss Lowther, I really admire the work that you're doing. You talked about 100 volunteers who were working for your organization, and now you only have about 10. Wow, I'm very surprised. So how much should you receive as help from the government to maintain your services? Because your services seem to be essential.
Thank you for that question. As I mentioned earlier, the $850,000 is certainly going to help us over the next year. Our issue is the long term. As I mentioned in my statement, we only have 6 paid staff members. So having to constantly be sourcing out revenue streams, looking for, grant applications and that sort of thing. And then, it usually falls to me, or if I can, get a qualified volunteer to help with those grant applications, those things are time consuming. So for us, if we had, kind of ongoing long-term funding, that would take a huge, huge strain off of our organization.
What are your needs in order to maintain the situation that you had before COVID? What are your financial needs at this time?
Now, I would say that our biggest financial needs are to be able to provide the food and the rent and those sorts of things for veterans. As I mentioned, the $850,000 would be is sufficient for a year. Normally, in the run of a year, we would actually spend more than $1 million. So, we'll have to make that up some way.
Votre réponse. Parfait.
Your answer is very clear. Thank you very much. Now I have a question for Mr. Clark. Will we be able to see how the millions of dollars will be given to each of the Legion branches? I would like to see a document where we can see the breakdown of how the money will be allotted to the different branches.
Very brief answer, please.
Absolutely. On the 7th of December, we'll be sharing with Veterans Affairs a spreadsheet of all the branches receiving funding and to what level.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Now over to MP Blaney for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we've heard very clearly is that during COVID-19, aging veterans in isolation has only grown. And that is a concern for me as well. And I'm just wondering if I could just start with you, Mr. Clark, knowing that we're moving into the next year or so, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to unfold. We know the financial burden has been challenging for all legions across Canada. I'm just wondering if you could talk about what this will mean for the ability of services for veterans, especially veterans that are aging and incredibly isolated and vulnerable to COVID-19.
The really encouraging thing that we have seen throughout this whole pandemic has been the ability for Legion members to volunteer to make sure that they maintain that contact with veterans, especially aged veterans in their community, contacting them on a daily basis or a weekly basis. I think of the gentleman in Southern Alberta who every day would go into his Legion branch, 98-year-old Second World War veteran, simply to have a cup of coffee and to play checkers. Doesn't have that ability anymore. But people in that community know him, know what he used to do, know what he needs, and are reaching out that way. So we're seeing this all across the country, that individuals are volunteering their time, making sure that they maintain social contact even when physical distancing can't be had.
Well, thank you. And I agree that Legions, and that's again why they're so important. They're like the heartbeat of our communities. And I know, you know, in Campbell River, we had a small Remembrance Day ceremony, and it amazed me how many veterans in their 90s came and socially distanced, sat in their cars to be there for that. So I just want to respect them. If I could just go to you, Ms. Lowry, if you could just talk about the same thing, what will be the impact in the long term?
Well, the long-term impact will be, well, it's going to take us a while to kind of catch up with over the past 8 months, what we've had to endure. With regard to the older veterans that you're speaking of and the social isolation, that's something that we've seen an awful lot of ourselves, especially, you know, with our drop-in centers. We have veterans who, you know, that's part of their regular routine is to come to the drop-in center, you know, to socialize, and they're not able to do that anymore. So, you know, we're having to come up with other creative ways to still be able to maintain that social interaction. We have a Guitars for Vets program that we offer as well, and we've had to adapt that a little bit. But luckily, that program actually has been extremely busy with people who've, you know, all of a sudden have a lot of time on their hands, and we've been able to still provide guitar lessons via Zoom and Skype and that sort of thing. So that's definitely helped with the social isolation.
Thank you very much. And that's time. For up next, we have for 5 minutes, MP Wagenthal, please.
Thank you, Chair. I too come from an area where it's very rural, and our Legions play a very important role. I keep telling them they're going to have to vote me in for many years hence before I can get to all of our Remembrance Day services that I would love to participate in. I want to focus right now on Deb and your drop-in and support centers. I had the opportunity to go to the one on Bezer in Ottawa a couple of months after it opened. And at that point, it was indicated to me that 65 veterans had already been referred from VAC to that particular facility for emergency help. The ability for you to assist them in so many ways very, very quickly was not lost on case managers. And now you indicate 77% of your cases are coming from VAC. I'm wondering how exactly this works with their emergency fund that is there to assist veterans. I know it takes them much longer to get that money out of the door, as you mentioned, but you also mentioned that they helped you keep your staff. Is that the fund that money came from? Was that actual emergency support fund to keep your staff on, or did I misunderstand what you said there?
So with regard, first of all, to the caseload coming from Veterans Affairs and their emergency funds, you're right, it does take them a little bit longer to get those funds into the hands of veterans. So that's when we work, you know, kind of in tandem with them. Yeah. So we'll take care of the emergency needs, they'll look after kind of the longer term sort of thing. And the criteria for their emergency funds is a little bit more strict than what we would require. Right. So the funding for our staff members, so we have been lucky with the emergency wage subsidy that we, you know, okay, that was definitely helpful.
Okay, that's where those funds came from then at that point in time. Yes. Okay, not from there. All right, that's I'm so pleased that you were able to get that support. Are you able now to cover those wages and get your administrator back, or what are you looking at going forward as far as that crucial staff?
Yes. So, you know, in addition to the wage subsidy, which I said is, you know, been very helpful, the most recent funding, the Veterans Organizations Emergency Support Fund, part of that funding was to assist with, you know, our staffing as well. So we will be getting an administrator back. Fortunately for the one we had, they found another job. So, but we are in the market for a new administrator. But to be fair, we could use a lot more staff. Like I said, we're six paid staff across the country. And we're dealing with upwards of 200 veterans a month. So
right. Okay, so you're receiving 850,000 of the 6 million that was earmarked here for other organizations outside of the Legion, and I do appreciate that the Legion, did not receive what their ask was. But also here, I look at this of the 6,850,000. You indicated you got 840,000 prior for 18 months. That's around 46,660 per month, and that money goes to the veterans programming, right? Helping those veterans. Is there money from that fund that's going to the administrative side, or is that covered through your charitable giving and that type of thing?
No, some of that money does go to the administrative side, as well as donations.
Okay. So what was the impact when you found yourself in a circumstance where there was no budget and we continue to not have a budget? Can you talk about the difference between receiving this funding? I know, thank you, Chair, now, which is, of course, I understand is very helpful, but there's that uncertainty that comes with not knowing what you have to work with going forward. Is that what you were trying to express as well?
Yes, so that's something that, I think all nonprofits deal with that is always wondering where the next paycheck's going to come from, so to speak. So that is always a constant concern for us, especially, as grateful as we are to have this funding, it is for a period of 1 year. Beyond that, we don't know.
Right. I really appreciate the work that you do, and I truly believe this is the best way for the government to be effective, is to be finding organizations like the Legion and like yourselves that are hands-on and really do know the circumstances and can deal with it quickly. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for 5 minutes, MP Fillmore, please.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses, not only for your remarkable work on behalf of Canada's veterans community, but for being here today. We're all very grateful for that. I have to say, it's always nice to see a familiar face from home. So, Deb, welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm going to direct my questions to you. And as you know, I have become quite familiar with the work of Vets Canada, having visited you and Jim over at the headquarters here at home on a number of occasions, and have participated in your Boots on the Ground initiative to help locate and assist homeless veterans. So with that familiarity, I would like to start with a profound and heartfelt thanks to you and Jim and the whole Vets Canada team, or family, if I can call it that, across the country. It really is remarkable, the work that you do and what you achieve. So I'd like to, if I could, dig into the Vets Canada experience since March of this year. Now, you said that donations are down by 41%, and that's a heartbreaking statistic. And at the same time, demand is up by 36%. Now, that's some very difficult math to reconcile. So I'm wondering 3 points, and then I'll stop talking. You can take the rest of the time just to sort of fill it in, but 3 points. I wonder if you could share with the committee how it is that you've been able to continue to serve veterans through the pandemic. And then secondly, specifically, if you can include any federal assistance that's been helpful. You've mentioned already the Veterans Emergency Fund, but any of the COVID funds like the wage subsidy or anything like that that have been helpful. And third, what else do you need? And really is what I'd like to hear. And then really I'm asking this question because I want to underscore to the committee and to people that are listening how important it is that organizations like yours get the support that you need to continue doing the work that you do. So the floor is yours, and take as much time as you want within my 5 minutes. Thanks, Deb. And it's really nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too, and thank you for your kind words. So with regard to some of the federal funding that has been available, yes, the emergency wage subsidy, we've been able to benefit from that. The Emergency Community Support Fund that was administered through the United Way, we did receive some funding from that, just specifically here in Nova Scotia. Unfortunately, I have to say the way that fund worked, you had to apply to the United Way. And there's not just one United Way. There's one in every, city across the country. So that would have meant, I don't know how many applications for us. And as I keep saying, we're a very small staff. We don't have people to be doing all of these applications. So we decided to do applications in just the locations where we had drop-ins. Unfortunately, the one in Edmonton had already closed. The application process, I mean. And so we ended up applying only for here in Nova Scotia, but we did receive just over $25,000 from that fund. So those are the two that have definitely benefited us throughout the pandemic. With regard to what we need, always comes down to money. And I know I keep talking about the staff. And as I mentioned in my statement, I don't take a paycheck. My husband and I founded this organization, and neither one of us take a paycheck. I work about 60 hours a week without a paycheck. I'm not saying that because I want a paycheck, because I don't. But if something were to happen to me and the organization needed to hire an executive director, where would that money come from? So those are, people don't like to think of their money as going towards administrative things, but, we have to have them.
You're on mute there, sir.
There we go. Thank you. I'm wondering.
30 seconds.
Okay, just quickly, are you undertaking any efforts to find new sources of revenue, or we're all hearing about pivots now? Have you discovered anything that's actually working differently or better for you in the pandemic?
We're not, well, I shouldn't say we're not looking. We're always looking for different sources of revenue. We have a couple of volunteers who are actually focusing on that right now, looking at some larger corporate donations, which we're hoping will be successful.
Okay, thank you so much for being here and for all your work, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, MP Fillmore, for keeping on time there. That brings us to the end of the second round, folks. And as I'd mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we do have a hard stop at 5:30 unless there is any absolute 100% must need to ask questions. I do know that we wanted to leave a few minutes at the end here for a discussion on timing for this committee. Seeing no hands go up real quick, I will simply thank all of the witnesses for appearing here today, and I really, really, really do appreciate. MP Desilets, are you saying thank you, or are you saying you need? Oh, now.
No, regardez, moi je.
No, I just wanted to take 30 seconds to thank our guests.
At the end here, guys, just to bring everybody up to speed on what's going on with this timing. But if there is a desperate need for a 30-second question and a 30-second answer from the witnesses, I think we can afford that. So MP Desilets, if you want to kick us off, and I see MP Carey also has a 30-second question as well. So very quickly, go ahead, sir. Desilets, you're on mute, sir.
I can formulate it as a question. I am once again impressed with the quality of our witnesses. I would like to thank them very much. And my question is the following. What are your needs? Do not hesitate to tell us about them. We don't necessarily have a solution. We don't have a magic wand, but do at least ask us for what you need. And I also wanted to thank the legions of my region. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think that was more of a comment than a question, but that's great. I will go on to MP Carey. If you can stick to 30 seconds, that'd be great, sir.
I'll go as quickly as I can. I was really concerned to hear about the number of legions at risk. I think the numbers are about a third. So my question to Steve would be the service officers at the Legions. We know that the VAC employees are working at home. I know that a lot of veterans need people on the ground. I was wondering if you've heard back about the load of work that they're having, what effect of these Veterans Affairs offices closures and perhaps the inability to talk to somebody. What's that done to the workload of the service officers?
There hasn't been additional workload put onto the service officers. We've sustained the same level that we had been providing on a remote basis, but the fact that we are still able to reach out to VAC staff for referrals and situations has been very helpful, but all of our service officers across the country are continuing to provide the service the veterans need.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Carey. That was actually a very valuable question, and I'm glad we got that in. I want to thank all of you for being here today. And,
sorry, Mr. Chair, I just have a request. I know Mr. Clark had mentioned that he's going to be providing a list to Veterans Affairs Canada about the funding to the Legions. I'm wondering if he could table that list excuse me, with the committee when it's completed.
Mr. Clark?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We are going to be completely transparent and accountable, and I'm happy to do that.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And I will allow the witnesses to leave now. I want to thank them all for attending and helping us with this study. As has been said many times over the last 2 hours, this is vitally important that we make sure that these cornerstone organizations across the country continue to not just survive but thrive. So thank you for helping us in that regard. For members of the committee, I'll just get you to hold on for a few minutes here, and we'll give you a quick update on the timing of these meetings. Thank you very much, folks. And I believe that's everybody. Yes, Madam Clerk, is that everybody? I think so. Okay, so we're still public, folks. Just keep that in mind. We had a conversation at the end of the last meeting about the ability to go long and wanting to get in as much time as possible for these witnesses. I had the opportunity to chat with a number of parties to find out what the story is about whether or not we can extend these meetings if we're interrupted with votes like we were today. All committee dates are not created equal, is what I've discovered. So basically, bottom line is this: on Mondays we have a hard stop at 5:30. The reason being we have a meeting after us at 6:30, and they need to get in. The folks need to get in and clean the room. And an hour before the meeting comes in after. So, for example, today we actually have Justice meeting at 6:30 in the same room that you're in, Mr. Broussard. And so they need to get in. The technicians and all of the clerk staff and all that, they will be new people. They'll switch out, so they have to clean the space in order to do that. On Wednesdays, we have a little more wiggle room. If, for example, we don't get the meeting started until 4:30, we can actually go to 6:30. It's not ideal, but it is doable. We can capture the whole 2 hours for our committee, but it is a fairly hard stop at 6:30. We run into some technical issues with regard to timing for interpretation and things such as that. So Wednesdays we have a little bit more latitude. Mondays we do not, and this is par for the course for, unfortunately, this time slot. Whether we're involved in a hybrid version of Parliament or not, we know, those that have been around for a while know that Mondays and Wednesdays are often interrupted with votes. So that is the situation. I just wondered if anybody had any questions. MP Broussard, I believe you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate you reaching out to me earlier today to discuss this. I think what we need to do as a committee is perhaps leave it at the discretion of the chair and the clerk in terms of the number of witnesses that we're getting in. So if we know, for example, that there are going to be continuous votes on Monday after QP, that we limit, like we did today. We had 3 today. In some cases, we may have 2. Monday would be the option for those days. And then secondly, if we are to get into further greater number of witnesses, that Wednesday would work better for that if we are able to extend a half hour in the event that one or more questions from members are desired beyond the 5:30 point, to be fair to the witnesses and to be fair to the members as well. So we've got some pretty important work ahead of us, as we discussed last week, and Wednesdays may be a little more appropriate of a day to do that. So that's my suggestion, Mr. Chair, and unless anybody has any other further discussion on it, that would be our position on this.
MP Desilets, you have the floor.
Oui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, we have votes on Monday, but we'll have votes on Wednesday too. So, look, an hour and a half just isn't long enough for our committee. And with all due respect to my colleagues, I'd hate to have to cut down on the number of witnesses. In fact, when we know ahead of time that there might be a vote, then I would like to be able to extend the meeting by half an hour on that day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So again, I will reiterate, on Monday, we do not have the option to extend the meeting. On Wednesday, we absolutely have the option to extend the meeting. So that's the gamble that we have. Mr. Broussard, yes, we only had 3 witnesses today, but we actually had 4 scheduled. One had an emergency and had to back out at the last minute. So the clerk is looking at these, of course, and we can, the clerk and I can sit down and take a look. We have coming up, I believe, is it 5 witnesses for Wednesday? So we have 5 witnesses for Wednesday. So we did have already sort of leaning towards Wednesday as a sort of a higher volume day for us, because we have that latitude. So we can definitely do that, Mr. Broussard, and keep that in mind moving forward.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, I think we have votes tomorrow. We don't have any votes on Wednesday scheduled at this point, so we may be in a better position on Wednesday to deal with the 5 witnesses. And we also only have a couple of weeks left to this session.
That's right.
So,
and they'll rotate it.
Right. So, like that's why I said keep it at your discretion and the discretion of the clerk to have a limited number of witnesses on Monday if possible, and then really extend it to Wednesday if we need to going forward. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely appreciate that. And like I said, just wanted to make sure it was clear for everybody on this committee that it's not my desire to cut us short. We absolutely have that hard stop in about 30 seconds. So if there's and I see MP Wagenthal has a quick 30-second question.
No question. I think we've come to a decision here.
Yep.
And I encourage us to accept that and adjourn the meeting.
Fantastic. Not seeing any objections to that. I adjourn, and thank you all for your work today. Appreciate it, folks. Have a good evening.